You are live with King Sigma, and today is 11th of April, 2021. And today we'll be discussing the house that black male built, um, Patrisse Kahn Cullors, real estate mogul. His story came to me from one of my listeners who sent me an email. I won't put his name out there. I also heard a clip from Kid Organic on this topic. I didn't know anything about it at first, but now that I've had a chance to read up on really what happened, it's clear that Patrisse Kahn Cullors, one of the original founders of Black Lives Matters, has aspirations to be the next Donald Trump. So the big thing last year, up before the election, everyone was trying to get rid of the real estate mogul, Donald Trump. And apparently that $90 million that was raised by Black Lives Matters in 2020 is being put to personal use, allegedly, until we get more information. But what we do know is that Patrisse Kahn Cullors had never seen the kind of income that would have allowed her to build a portfolio of real estate assets that at the time that I'm uploading this live stream, they were claiming that she already owned 4 or 5 properties that she's just bought over the last 2 years or so. Now, for many of those that don't know, she's one of the 3 lesbians that were the original founders of Black Lives Matters, which came about in 2013 after George Zimmerman was acquitted of killing the teenager Trayvon Martin in Florida. So she got together with some other women and they created the Black Lives Matters Corporation. It's not actually a 501c organization as I originally thought it was, but as of now, it's only known as a corporation. So she was one of the original founders. But we know that prior to the George Floyd murder, and we all know that the case of Derek Chauvin is ongoing right now. And what I'm hearing is that it's likely to be a decision from the jury the last week of April. So it was really the killing of George Floyd at the hands of former officer Derek Chauvin that really catapulted Black Lives Matters into a new economic stratosphere. Because what happened is that a lot of corporations got behind the Black Lives Matters Corporation. A lot of the white liberals, using this as a chance to virtue signal, pumped a lot of money into Black Lives Matters Corporation. Now, what's interesting about Black Lives Matters and their founders is that there was a lot of discussion last year when the story broke that one of the mission statements listed on their public site that's now been scrubbed stated that they were a Marxist organization setting out to dismantle the traditional nuclear family. And they were about creating spaces for non-heterosexuals, which it's ironic because most of their funds came from the death of heterosexual Native Black American men. So what happened is that they ended up scrubbing that story eventually from their website as it became mainstream, not in the liberal mainstream media, but a lot of the Republican ran networks and targeted networks put that out there. And a lot of Black men themselves took to social media and was calling out this irony that they were making all this money off of Black male death, but at the same time looking to marginalize and alienate Black males from the discussion. So the actual article that I found talking about when they scrubbed the article was the mission statement from their site was posted on on the New York Post. But I'm going to go ahead and read the information that came out about Patrisse Cullors and her home buying spree, and then we'll talk a little bit about the mission of Black Lives Matters and why it's important that Black men do take control of not only their narrative, but their finances and start being very strategic in what they fund and what they don't fund in their name. So let me bring that up for you all. So hopefully you all can see my screen. You know I can't see you when I have this screen up. So I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of the article, and then I'll check back in the chat so I can make sure that you guys are actually able to see this screen. That's one of the weaknesses of StreamYard, is that I can't see the screen at the same time and see the chat. So the title of this article came from the Daily Mail over in Great Britain. It says, Black Lives Matter's founder is branded a fraud after buying a $1.4 million home in an upscale, mostly white enclave in LA. Patrisse Kahn, 37, has bought an expansive property in Topanga Canyon. The district in which the Black Lives Matter founder will now live is 88% white and 1.8% black. Critics accused her of abandoning her social justice and activist roots. Cullors has written a best-selling memoir and has a follow-up out in October. In October, she signed a multi-platform, multi-year deal with Warner Brothers. Black Lives Matters brought in $90 million in donations last year. It emerged in March. So the article goes on to say, Black Lives Matter's co-founder and self-professed trained Marxist, quote unquote, has raised eyebrows by purchasing a $1.4 million Los Angeles home in a largely white district. Patrisse Kahn, a 37-year-old artist, organizer, and freedom fighter, has bought a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom house in Topanga Canyon, complete with a separate guest house and expensive backyard, reports say. The home is described in the real estate listing as having a vast, great room with vaulted and beamed ceilings. The realtors write that the large backyard is ideal for entertaining or quietly contemplating cross-canyon vistas framed by mature trees. The AP reported that Black Lives Matter took in $90 million in donations last year. It's not clear if or how Cullors is paid by the organization, as his finances are opaque. So here are a couple pictures of Miss Cullors. Now, Miss Cullors married a woman in 2016. So based on what the article is saying, you know, she needed the space for her growing family. So, you know, she got the wife now, she got the status now, and she now has the $1.4 million home. But she also has a few more. So I'm going to stop there for a moment to check in with the chat, just to make sure you guys. So were you all able to see the screen that I had up? Just want to make sure that I'm getting the article to you. So were you able to see the screen, chat? But anyways, one of the funny things about the article is that it points to the fact that Patrisse Kahn, she talks about being a Marxist, and the Marxists are all about abolishing private property. They're about abolishing private speech and free speech, and abolishing, you know, private family relationships as well. So the three, you know, fundamental parts of the communist Marxist rhetoric is that to destroy private property, the private family, and private speech. Those are the three hallmarks. So sure, you know, different communist systems, they may go beyond those three principles, but that's one thing that all the existing socialist wannabe communist systems are built on. So the destruction of private property, abolishing the private nuclear family, and private free speech. So she's halfway there, or she's a third there, at least when it comes to the destroying the nuclear family piece. But obviously, she's very attracted to capitalism. And we've seen this often with those that are self-professed liberals and socialists or whatnot. When it comes to communism for you and capitalism for them, that's the flag that they're actually waving. So they're 100% for personal capitalism for themselves, but they want communism for you. And that's something that we see with a lot of the business people that leave their communist countries where they were part of inner parties within their countries, and they were able to accumulate millions or billions of dollars. And I always point to the example of the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets has become like a ownership club for retired communists, right? So we know that the former owner of the Brooklyn Nets, he was a billionaire before he even came to the United States and bought the Brooklyn Nets. Now, what some people may have not been aware of is that in the last few years, he actually sold his interest in the Brooklyn Nets for multiple billions to another billionaire from the communist nation of China. So the new owner of the Brooklyn Nets is also a former communist. I don't know if he still claims to be a communist when he goes back home, but what we do know is that right now, he's the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, one of the most valuable NBA franchises. So we do see this trend. And it had me thinking about, the situation with Patrisse Kahn, that one of the things about the communist-minded person is that they want to lower the standard for competition or eliminate the competition by the means of the state. And they want to take it to the absolute maximum. So that's what the communists do. Some of the most evil and crooked individuals are those that promote communism, because we know that that system creates a power dynamic where the state, which is just people and organized groups of people pursuing power, they get all the power and decision making on every single level. So everything that has private in front of it is now becomes public, except the party that manages and administers the centralized system in a socialist wannabe communist country. So the goal of the really evil-hearted communists is to become a party member where they get the benefits and they get to experience that free market capitalism, but they get to assign to you specifically what you're going to do with your life, and specifically when you're going to do it. And we've seen that so many times when any information comes out about these socialist systems. So they assign you where to live, where to eat, who to be with, but those that actually control the apparatus of the state, they're no different than those administrators in a capitalist country or mixed economies or whatnot. They put themselves in a position to get the benefits of the most productive systems. And that's something that we see with a lot of these party members. And we saw it in the situation with the Russian and Chinese owner of the Brooklyn Nets. So Patrisse Kahn is just one in a long line of hypocrites that promote the destruction of the family for you, that promote the abolishing your free speech and your private property. But isn't it ironic that with the money that was raised, the part that she's taken her share out of, so we know at a minimum, she spent 1.4 million on houses. But the news is also reporting that she may have 4 or 5 additional housing in her private real estate portfolio now, all from the gains of black male's death, but specifically George Floyd's death. I'm not exactly sure how much total monies has been raised by these white-run, black-targeted, allegedly organizations in the last just 24 months. George Floyd's murder was a cash cow for these white liberal controlled organizations. Sure, they'll have a couple black faces up front, specifically those that are part of the Rainbow Coalition movement. But when you actually peel back the layers and look at their financial statements, notice that the article said that their finances were opaque. And the reason that they're opaque is because they don't want the world to know that they're really a corporation operating as a front for some of the other larger private organizations that want to manipulate and control the narratives that black grassroots were putting out. Because you hear a lot of complaints from people that were in the grassroots in regards to how Black Lives Matters was sharing the funds and how they were refusing to network with the original organizers of a lot of these anti-cop, anti-police brutality movements. So what we have is a lot of the organizations and government entities that are into, like, the COINTELPRO style of infiltrating organizations, they're behind a lot of this stuff. And it's pretty clear to me, and I'm not one to be like a conspiracy theorist, but it's definitely clear that some powerful white groups are controlling organizations like Black Lives Matter. And I thought it was interesting, with the thumbnail that I chose from a famous picture of Gloria Steinem, how Patrisse Cullors aligned herself with Jane Fonda to replicate that picture. So Jane Fonda is another one of these white feminists. She used to be a popular actress in Hollywood who is big on, talking about intersectionality, quote unquote, social justice or whatnot. But what we learned, shout out to the brother, Mr. Edward Hart. Appreciate your support, brother. The Inquisitive Prince, shout out to you. Let me make sure I get the other one. Dallas Cowboys, shout out to you too, brother. Thanks for joining in the conversation. This was definitely short notice, but I just think that it's important that we do have a conversation when it comes to this whole Black narrative and how it's being promoted in the media. Because to me, I think it's one of the great schemes that we have going on in 2021 is that you have a group that openly promotes misandry and anti-Black misandry specifically, but at the same time, they're able to use the deaths of Black men to build these financial empires that they're building. So it's definitely a good hustle right now in 2021 to be fake woke. And I think it needs to be called out. So I'm going to go back and bring up. So the brother Peter Frank says, pump your brakes. Do not blame Whitey for this. This works because of how successful the feminist movement was in breaking up the Black family. And this is the Black woman. Oh, it's not a blame situation. In situations like this where you're talking about organizations that are able to raise massive millions of dollars like that, this isn't no Whitey or just Black women or just white woman kind of thing. This is organized collaboration. So I have to disagree with you on that, Peter Frank. This isn't just about whites. This is about organized collaboration to extract money that should be going to Black boys and Black men issues is what is my whole point. If your whole organization is about social justice, and the group in America that gets the least amount of justice before the court system is Black males, and you're also at the same time raising your money off of the death of Black males, then a large share of that 90 million should have been going to issues related to Black men. And because so much of the reason why Black men in the majority are at a disadvantage that they are, it's partially politics, but it's a big part of its economics. So if you're truly for the justice and the upliftment of Black men, which we know that they're not, because they openly said it on their own mission statement that, in fact, they consider by default Black men to be misogynist. So keep that in mind. Their whole default position prior to taking down their original mission statement after being exposed by the Republican media and the Black grassroots Black men was the default position that Black men are misogynists. That's one of the reasons that they've been so heavy in bed with corporate America and Hollywood in pushing the feminization of Black males. So that's been their position the whole time. So this isn't just about white people. You see what I'm saying? This isn't just about Black women either. It's about a whole group of people who are working together at the expense of Black men. And I heard the brother Grinch talking earlier today, and he was talking about the lack of ruthlessness in Black men. And I think that we do have to listen to someone giving you that information, because we've been too soft about things. We've been too stoic about things, and we've been too passive in sitting back and letting other people convince us that they're working in our interests. But when we look out on the scene of America in 2021, that is not the case. We see a prioritization of illegal immigrants coming into America, and they're living, very well off the dime of American taxpayers, right in sight of the largest homeless blocks in America in places like LA, Skid Row, and these kind of places. But yet they have illegal immigrants housed in 5-star accommodations while Black men are sitting there on the streets, living outside, fighting with each other over scraps. Yet Black men, in the majority, 80% or so, harnessed their vote and voted for policies that aren't having any impact on them. And now, as you all know, those like Patrisse Kahn Cullors, they're sitting back and they're putting all their energy and that political capital that you 8 out of 10 black men helped to give them, they're using it to fight for this alleged Asian hatred. So that's been the big thing during the first quarter of 2021. It's been this whole thing about stop Asian hate, and this claim that random black people have some kind of agenda to go out and beat up Asians on the streets. So I'm quite sure you all know about that. And it is interesting to sit there and watch so many black public figures and those blacks like Patrisse Cullors, who are getting their money off of the death of black men, put that weight of their organizations behind things like Asian violence, alleged violence against Asians, and putting their money behind those that are also fighting for the rights of illegal immigrants without saying anything about the rights of the black majority. So I just think that's interesting that that's what this thing has come to. I want to bring that article back up for you all. So let me get back to that. So all right, we're back to this article. So in the article coming from the Daily Mail, they showed a few of Patrisse Cullors' properties. And she was named Glamour's Woman of the Year in 2016. So the media is definitely pumping her hard right now. And you have to be very careful. I believe it was the poet and lyricist Gil Scott-Heron when he talked about the revolution will not be televised. So you always have to have your you have to have that second thinking cap on and not just trust what you're seeing, and look closer when you have these figures who happen to be black skinned that are put before you, and they just all of a sudden, groups that could care less about you as a black man, they're putting all these people before you saying, hey, this person's going to work for you, but they're black. You got to follow them and this and that. So here's one of Patrisse Cullors' homes. The property with its high ceilings and expansive backyard is in the Topanga Canyon area. So this is one view of her place. For a communist, she's living very, very well. She's living very, very well. So Cullors' new home has high ceilings and a sliding door leading out to the tree-filled yard. So this is her interior of her living room. The death of black men is feeding a lot of people right now. You can live good if you can organize yourself around black male death. So the light-filled and airy home is just 20 miles from where she grew up, but a world away in style. A world away in style. And you sit there and you think about that for a moment. What kind of computer programs could have been started with the value of just this one home, 1.4 million? A lot of computer programs for those black boys that are going to need to be able to compete 10 years, 20 years from now. But that's not where the money's going. And she has the property features its own guest cabin, which the realtor says could serve as an office. So I mean, man, she's living good. And here we get the helicopter sky view of this 1.4 million home. It says Cullors' expansive new home boasts of canyon views and calm amid the trees. In her new zip code, 88% of those residents are white and 1.8% are black. And it's funny that they said 1.8% are black. So we're talking probably the other 8 or 10% of are likely Hispanics or something like that. And those 1.8% blacks are probably, quote unquote, the new term that they use, people of color that got less than 1/4 black in them or are biracial or something. So the house is only 20 miles from her childhood home in Van Nuys, but it is a world away. In her 2018 memoir, she tells of being raised by a single mother with her 3 siblings in an impoverished neighborhood where she lived in a 2-story tan-colored building where the paint was peeling and where there is a gate that does not close properly and an intercom system that never works. So this is her, before the money started coming in. Now that she got the money, she can get the little personal trainer. You're gonna see a glow up coming soon from Patrisse Kahn at the expense of black men. So here's some comments on Twitter. People responding to this disclosure that Patrisse Kahn is building a real estate portfolio, a multi-million-dollar portfolio at that, off the death of black men specifically. We're talking generational wealth off of the deaths and struggle of black folks here. Justice Team Network and BML founder paid $1.4 million for a home. This past week, we bought a cot for our unhoused black elder friend to keep him off the ground. So this commentator is speaking to the fact that, you know, if you're going to be raising $90 million for an organization that probably at the time that they initially received the money, maybe they had less than 20 people working there, that money should have been going to programs to house black people, specifically black men. So this person, Andy Ngo, says Black Lives Matter's co-founder Patrisse Kahn has purchased a 1.4 million home in a wealthy, secluded area of Los Angeles. Kahn identifies as a communist and advocates for the abolishment of capitalism. When will people get that Black Lives Matter is a racket? And if you have money on this organizing, you're a chump. This isn't the first time she's been in hot water. 1.4 million could have helped a lot of inner city kids. Patrisse Kahn Cullors buys Topanga Canyon home. So this other person says, Happily American says, well, at least it should finally be clear to everyone what a fraud Patrisse Kahn Cullors is. Rather than helping the Black Lives Matter chapters, her brand of Marxism is buying a 1.4 million home in an upscale liberal white enclave in Los Angeles. Being a hashtag race huckster pays. Just ask Sharpton and Jackson. So let me check out the chat what you guys think about what I read. So to the chat, you know, what do you think about the situation with Patrisse Kahn and what we're reading about? Here you have someone who talks. Hey, shout out to the brother Fast Attack. What up to you too, bro? Appreciate you dropping in. Full Circle in the building. What up? 100 Full Circle. Y'all go check out Full Circle's channel. So yeah, what do you all think about the fact that here you have a woman who is promoting the idea of communism and claims to be a Marxist, but the first thing that she does when she gets access to a pot of money is exercise her rights to be a capitalist. That's so that's what's going on here. In her situation, she couldn't wait. That money burned a hole in her pocket the moment that she got a chance to exercise a little bit of that great capitalism. And you know, I'm definitely a capitalist, but I'm not one of these advocates running around talking about communism, because I've looked at communism, and I'm going to say it again, especially in regards to the situation with Patrisse Kahn Cullors, as in Khan woman Cullors. Ultimately, I really haven't had anyone explain to me why I, as a descendant of American slaves, would embrace communism, knowing that communism and Marx, Engels, and a lot of the early communist writers talked about the fact that they got a lot of their ideas for communism from slaves, from the way that American slaveholders exercised their power over the original blacks in this country by taking away their right to private property, by taking away their right to choose their mate, to choose their husband or wife, taking away the right to do what they will with their children, and taking away all rights to speech or any other rights that exist under any charter or any constitution that ever existed. That's what never really made sense to me about communism as a system, is that the whole origin of it, if you listen to Engels and Marx themselves, is to destroy private property, the private family, and private rights. And they got a lot of that from the American slave system, because black slaves had no rights by which the white man is bound to respect. Under communism, no human being has rights by which any communist is bound to respect. So that's something to think about. So here we have a situation with Patrisse Kahn Cullors making national news for being the hypocrite that she is. So what we have in this generational shift from Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and those guys, we have these propped up public figures, especially with these black females who they're using, that are replacing the outgoing old race hustlers like Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and these people. So now they're just putting a dress on the person and making it a black female, but the goal is the same: personal enrichment. So I want to read a couple of you guys' comments, and I'm gonna finish this article. So let's see what you guys are saying about this. So I'm gonna go back up. So Turbattle says DeRay McKesson and Peyton Head are not straight black males. Of course they're not. If you're a heterosexual black male, you're gonna have a hard time breaking into the mainstream in 2020 and for the next few years, unless there's a shift, which there definitely could be a shift. Because again, these things are not linear. You can see how trends seem to be going one way, and then some kind of black swan or white swan event happens and changes everything. I damn sure had no idea what things would look like in 2021 after this whole COVID pandemic. So, you can never know what's going to come in the future. You can only try your best to plan for it. So let me see. Devil's Bane says Kid Cudi and Lil Nas X are compromised. Of course they're compromised. It's interesting. I lost my stepfather in December 2020. He's the only person I know that passed away from COVID allegedly. That's the line that we got, at least. But who knows what really happened? And I remember when I was in undergrad, I did some acting, and I was in a play, and I got a lot of praise for it. And I was invited to go with this tour company to do another play and to do some Hollywood type stuff. And at the time I had to make a decision between going on tour with this acting company and this theater company, or taking a position in finance that would secure a foundation for me post-graduation. Well, after having a conversation with my deceased stepfather, he told me that, you could do the theater thing and all that, and you could be a struggling artist, but your heart really isn't in that. And he said, plus, going out to Hollywood, if you want to picture what it is to be a Hollywood black person, picture getting bent over by one of the little hats for the rest of your career. That's what he told me. And then I dropped that interest immediately. So when you talk about the whole Lil Nas X thing, that just reminds me, anytime anyone tells me about anything that someone that's a public figure in Hollywood does, I always think back to that story that he told me a couple months before I graduated from undergrad. Because there was a movie by Mario Van Peebles' father. His name is Melvin Peebles. I'm not sure if he's still living, but he had this movie called Sweetback. A movie called Sweetback. It's one of these old school movies. And in that movie, there's a scene like that in there too, where Melvin Van Peebles is trying to get funding for this movie called Sweetback. And he said that the different Hollywood rich men out there, they were willing to help him fund the movie only if he was to do degenerate sexual acts with them or for them. And he was able to reject that kind of dysfunction and deviancy, and he found a way to fund his movie. But he talked about in that movie how they tried to get him to do things like that as well. So this whole Lil Nas X thing and Kid Cudi, it's not a surprise to me, man. Because I understand that when it comes to money, people will do a lot of things that will cause them to never be able to look at themselves in the mirror again. And I know that Nike tried to say that they got some kind of settlement with Lil Nas X, but I have a hard time believing that Lil Nas X was able to put out a video like that with the power and the interest that Nike represents and get away with it. So I'm not buying this whole idea that Nike, well, they forced it a withdrawal of the video and they did a recall on the shoes. I'm not buying it that they didn't know something. They knew something. So now they're claiming that they didn't know and that they're doing some kind of settlement, but I'm not buying that because we see too much of that. And that's why that whole Paul Pierce thing bothered me as well this week. The Paul Pierce thing, again, I've said it numerous times on my streams. The one culturally approved hate that I'm aware of, that is approved hate, is that of black men. Nothing is more approved by more groups and more institutions as an okay form of hate than the hatred of black men. And so I think a lot of these guys, they're trying to escape black masculinity. They're in a rush to escape it because they're trying to find a more comfortable position in a society that hates black men. So their response to it is to say that I'm going to tuck and run. But these women, they're going to be able to do whatever they want. And other groups are going to be able to do whatever they want. So it's stop Asian hate. But I say stop misandry. Stop misandry. That's what I say right now. That's probably one of the biggest forms of hatred in America that goes unspoken on. And again, going back to Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce was at a private party when he was playing cards with his people. They had a few women in there stripping in thongs. No big deal. He gets fired from his job with ESPN. It didn't matter how much money he made for ESPN. It didn't matter that he was a Hall of Fame NBA player. It didn't matter how popular he was on the show that he was hosting as an NBA analyst. The moment that picture broke, they fired him. And I got to thinking, I was like, I thought of two situations. One, would he have gotten fired if he was a black woman with male strippers at a private party outside of work? Or would it have been called empowerment? And the irony was that not too long ago, not too many months ago, I think it was February, matter of fact, when they had the Grammys, the same music and the same twerking in the same wardrobe that Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion and them other thoughts was doing on stage at the Grammys back in February or whatnot, that was the same scene that was in Paul Pierce's private home when that picture was released on social media. So his strippers were dancing to Cardi B, but it's wrong for him to pay them and allow them to be sexually empowered women. It's wrong. It's criminally wrong. Enough to get you discharged and fired from work. But it's okay for Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion to do the same exact thing those strippers were doing. Cardi B was a former stripper, twerking on stage, background as a stripper, #1 selling artist. It's okay for her to do that, not in the privacy of her home, but to be broadcast to millions of people everywhere on the planet. So this double standard, man, it's getting out of control. But this is kind of where black men have found themselves in 2021 by not controlling their own economic foundations and their own economic, environments. This is the position that we find ourselves in 2021. Corporate America is against you. The government is against you. Hollywood is against you. And the black family itself has revolted against itself. So you're pretty much left at this point to fend for yourself. And the quicker that you guys get that and wake up, the better off you're going to be. So let me see a few more of these comics and I'm going to finish this article. So the brother, Rodney Holmes, I'm doing well. I've been working overtime on my book, The 13th Law. So it looks like the brother Rodney Holmes got a book, The 13th Law. So y'all check with him on that. So Rodney Holmes says, any black male that voted for Biden Harris is a damn fool. That's what I've been saying from the beginning. That's been my thought from the beginning. I knew that there was nothing good going to come from the average black male out of a Biden Harris administration. And I haven't seen anything yet. But that's for another day. So Evan Duncan says, a few Asians have even pushed back against Stop Asian Hate as false. Of course it's false. But, again, man, they create. So shout out to the brother, Great Britain. Respect to you, brother. Appreciate your support and tuning in. Really is. It's a psyop. DNC wants a larger voting bloc from the Asians. Yeah, for them, that thing with the Asians is interesting to me, just like it is with the Hispanics, because they're actually both lean heavily towards the GOP. So the only way they can get that voting bloc that you're talking about is they're going to have to put more and more billions behind promoting this Asian hate. And then they'll try to put that tag on the GOP Whereas we know that racism doesn't have a political label. Some people just hate other races of people because they hate other races of people. They could be a liberal, they could be a so-called conservative, a progressive, whatever. Some people just hate people of different races. So I guess one of their goals with these Asians must be to say, there's all this hate going on, and it's those people doing it. Come join us. But that doesn't seem to have been the trend. If you look at like the way that the House races were, which kind of tells a lot, the U.S. House races, the Republicans won way more House races than was expected. And the Democrats lost more than expected. So if that's the goal that they're leaning towards, it doesn't make a lot of sense considering that the Latinos and Asians, they lean heavily towards the GOP, especially the Latinos, considering that the Latinos have that Catholic religion in their background, and they're opposed to a lot of the stuff of the leftists, which is why most likely the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will be running for president in 2024, especially if the Republicans take the House in 2022, which is expected by most of these political analysts. So don't be surprised by that. Let me see. Rodney Holmes says, I thought Marxists were against owning private property. Yes, Marxists are against you owning private property, but not themselves owning private property. As long as they can take out their competitors, they're okay. So that's the goal of communism, is to make you all mediocre and disenfranchise you politically, disenfranchise you your ability to compete in the open market. But they're going to keep doing their deals with capitalist countries. Because again, I just find it odd that a lot of these rich former communists moved to the West to live in a capitalist society that protects their private property, whereas in their country, their private property would not be protected. Shout out to you, Fast Attack. Appreciate you for dropping through. Let's see. So Peter Frank says, we can tell all black people this story, and tomorrow another black man is murdered and the same game will be worked again. Why? Because the family members of the black men are vultures themselves. You're not lying, Peter Frank, about that. The family are vultures. It's called the black male death industrial complex at this point. You can get real rich off of black male death right now. So it's an industry itself now. So I agree with you. A lot of poverty, a lot of thirst, and they know that there's like a valuation now because, you know, they've set a market price on the head of black men. So there are some of those like very snakish relatives and opportunists that just look at it like, hey, that man's death right there represents 5 million. They probably hoping that another person in their family dies at the hand of a cop. I think that's one of the reasons why they sometimes be egging these people on when they're stopped by the police. And, you know, my grandfather and my parents, they always told me that when you're dealing with a police officer as a black male, comply. Just that simple. No matter how you personally feel, what the injustice is at that moment, that officer is licensed by the state to take your life. And as we've seen in a lot of these cases, and we see going on right now with the Derek Chauvin case, in a lot of these cases, man, that person is going to get off, especially if the victim is a black person. And you're not doing yourself any favor by sitting there arguing with someone with a license to kill on the streets. I don't know why this is such a difficult concept to understand. You fight your battle in the court itself. So when you're in a situation with a police officer, I was always told, you fight your battle when the officer leaves, go file your police report, start a case, live to represent yourself in court. Don't end up dead on the street and everyone else is living high on the horse out there with Patrisse Kahn in the suburbs of LA and you're dead. And that's what's going on right now. You don't see a lot of these so-called activists telling black men, comply, comply, comply. Your life is in danger anytime you encounter one of these race soldiers that are posing as cops because they're mixed in with the cops that are just doing their job versus those cops that are KKK with badges. So that's how you have to approach it as a black man. But you don't see these activists saying that. They're actually trying to encourage immaturity and emotionality in black males that find themselves being victimized by these cops. The worst thing you can do as a black man is to start to try to assert authority over one of these racists with a license to kill. But that's just my opinion. Others have different opinions on it. They claim that you should declare your rights right there on the spot. You should go back and forth with the cops. It's okay for you to end up like George Floyd with a knee on your neck for 9 minutes, because we'll support you after you're dead. We'll go sue the city after you're dead. I tell black men, stay alive to fight another day. And in that Derek Chauvin case, what it's looking like, even if you look at his charges, he didn't have a first-degree murder charge on there or anything like that. The charges that I remember was unintentional second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. And we know that with the second-degree murder charge, that's a maximum of like 40 years. And that's the harshest charge that they're trying to put on him. But then the next one, third degree, that's 25 years. But we all know that the most likely that he gets charged with the least harsh sentence and charge, which would be second-degree manslaughter. And with the manslaughter, sure, under the way that the rules are written, he can get up to 10 years, but he can also get no prison time and just a fine of up to $20,000. So we're seeing it right now as we talk. The Derek Chauvin case that helped make Patrisse Cullors rich, most likely that police officer is going to walk. And understand that's not the politically correct response that people want to hear, but I'm telling you, man, I get a feeling that the best case scenario under this bad situation is going to be that manslaughter charge. And again, remember, the courts have some leeway with these things. So they'll say things like, well, he was a cop. He didn't have a criminal record. There were mitigating circumstances. So you may be thinking, oh, he got convicted of second-degree manslaughter. He's going to get 10 years. And then what they'll do, they'll extend out the sentencing to a later period once like a lot of the riotous energy dies down, and then like 60 days later, and then you'll be hearing that he was sentenced to 10 years probation and a year on 9 years probation and a year on home arrest or something like that, and a $5,000 fine. So don't be surprised if that's the worst sentencing that he gets. And don't even be more surprised if he ends up getting like a mistrial, because I hate to say it, but I'm starting to believe that he might even have a mistrial coming up. But anyways, let me finish this article for you all so I can let you all get up out of here. So going back to the article from the Daily Mail says, some critics argued that living in $1 million home was at odds with her social justice mission. Valley Ho for Social Justice, a movement that describes itself as abolition plus socialist collective in the struggle for liberation, self-determination, and poor working class solidarity, said it was an ill-judged flaunting of wealth. We're talking generational wealth off of the deaths and struggle of Black folks here. They tweeted, Justice Teams Network and Black Lives Matters founder paid $1.4 million for a home. The past week, we bought a cot for our unhoused Black elder friend to keep him off the ground. One LGBTQ activist described Black Lives Matter as a racket. Jason Whitlock, a sports journalist, tweeted that she had a lot of options on where to live. She chose one of the whitest places in California. She'll have her pick of white cops and white people to complain about. That's a choice, bro. So Tucker Carlson on Friday night told his Fox News viewers that Twitter had even begun taking down reference to the property. Carlson noted that Whitlock posted on Twitter a link to the original story about the property on a celebrity property blog, The Dirt. He posted this on Twitter, just made the obvious point. What happened? His account has been locked by Twitter, said Carlson. This was a news story on Real Estate Blog. He posted it. Lots of other people posted it. But when Jason Whitlock, who is an extremely effective voice for reason, who speaks clearly and is honestly and is therefore a threat, they shut him down. Amazing on many levels. Cullors founded Black Lives Matter with Alicia Garza and Opel Tometi in 2013 in response to the acquittal of George Zimmerman, who killed Trayvon Martin. It is unclear if Cullors is paid by the group, which is currently cleft by deep divisions. Got a couple pictures from the Black Lives Matter protests here. I'm in LA, not too far from Cullors' new home. So, you know what's interesting is that in my city, after the whole George Floyd riots, they destroyed a $500 million worth of property here. And the federal government refused, based on the Obama precedent of reimbursing properties that are destroyed in these kind of riots, where the governor of the state didn't step in to quell the rebellions in the streets and these demonstrations. The federal government under Barack Obama had already established that the federal government is not going to step in and underwrite and pay off these debts that are destroyed by rioters, if the governor had a chance to stop it by bringing in the National Guard and other law enforcement. So under Trump, he continued that policy as well. And he said that if the governor has the ability to step in and save their citizens' property, the governor should do it first. I don't want to exercise federal authority unless the governor calls me. So in my state, $500 million of private citizens' property was destroyed not too far from my own home. And I know one building that was completely destroyed that I used to go to for taxes and to get Subway, that was right by my gym. That whole building was firebombed and destroyed. Literally destroyed. And one of the businesses destroyed was a Black business. It was actually an East African restaurant that had been around for a long time in that building. Destroyed. You see what I'm saying? So here's Patrisse Kahn Cullors living out there in the hills of LA. I bet you if there's another riot in LA due to like the possible acquittal of Derek Chauvin, she will be safely away in her gated community up there in the LA hills. Now think about that for a second. I guarantee you, if those rioters show up to Patrisse Kahn Cullors' home with her wife, defacing her property, walking over her plants in her garden, you remember that couple, that white couple that made the news, the two lawyers who in St. Louis came out with the shotguns and said, "Get off my property." And they were charged with some charges of protecting their own property in self-defense, but they were charged with like brandishing weapons. I guarantee you that if they show up to Patrisse Kahn Cullors' new $1.4 million home or one of her other smaller properties, talking about justice for George Floyd, she's coming out with that shotgun too. And that wife coming out with that shotgun as well. So this is the kind of hypocrisy that we're dealing with, man, when it comes to representing Black men, respecting your property, and respecting your aspirations. So if you're going to, as Black men, we can no longer pay attention to this whole conversation about intersectionality, because it's just fog, man. It's a scam. Intersectionality does not include Black men unless they're homosexuals. I'm just being honest. I've looked at it. I've looked at so much of their white papers, their literature, and their actual outcomes and the programs they create. I don't see any of it going to Black boys or to Black men, unless it's to feminize Black men. So they'll pump millions and billions of dollars into programs that will somehow come about emasculating Black men, but nothing into anything that's going to be productive. That's going to help you become the one thing that we really need more of: Black men controlling their own business and their own economic situation and being able to employ other Black men with needed skills. That's really what's missing from the equation right now for Black men. Being able to harness our own talents and employ each other and employ ourselves, and to have our own economy that exists outside of corporate America and Hollywood and Madison Avenue. That's just my opinion. So let me see what else you guys are saying. So Rodney Holmes says a big clue that the cop is going to get off is when the families get paid. Oh yeah, there was no secret that they released that settlement right before the trial started. I mean, literally like the weekend before the trial started, they settled with the family of George Floyd. So we know that's not a surprise. So things are about to get very interesting in the next week, because I believe that they're going to be doing a closing statements on the Derek Chauvin trial by next Friday. And then the jury is supposed to come to a decision the following Friday. So it looks like we'll get a decision around like the 27th or so of the month in that Chauvin case, and I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think he will get off, but I'm just telling you guys that I won't be surprised that he get off on some kind of mistrial or something of that nature. But I don't see him being convicted of the second degree unintentional. I don't see the third degree conviction coming. If he is convicted, it'll likely be the second degree manslaughter charge. I'm almost positive of that. Hey, salute to the brother Xanatos Clutch. Y'all go check him out over there doing his nightly news thing on his channel. The brother Xanatos says the ADOS race deserves to be done after their unapologetic anti-male and especially anti-productive black male stance for decades. ADOS people are unremorseful as the American Dwight racists. That's a very strong argument that Xanatos is making there. I don't see much proof against it though. So let me see. K-Mac, the black woman is becoming millionaires off the deaths of the men they deeply hate but claim to love. Nah, they're trying, like, the funny thing is that even the white guys are making fun of these black chicks. You heard Tucker Carlson, he was saying that, like, she gets to live next to all these white people. And that's the thing about it. These whites, they understand that they've engineered you so well and they know you so well that they understand that all this protesting about whites in this is just a call for a pat on the head from white daddy and white mommy. Ultimately, that female, think about it. In a situation with Patrisse Kahn, her wife is a black Canadian woman. So she could have moved to a community of wealthy black people if that was her goal, even as a communist, right? No, she specifically chose an area that is less than 2% black. And we're not talking ADOS black. We're not talking black mom, black dad black. We're talking that paper bag black kind of thing, right? She specifically made sure that when she walked around that community and she was meeting with that realtor, she asked them, how many black people live here? And the realtor was probably thinking like, oh, you want a community like Baldwin Hills, we got like a lot of blacks and all that. So, oh, no. How many blacks are living here? He was like, and you know that they all try to exaggerate. So we know they said 1.8%. So he probably said something like 5%. And she probably looked at the Canadian black wife and was like, that's kind of pushing it. You got something whiter. So that's what Tucker Carlson was pointing to. That's what I'm saying is so funny, is that these blacks be thinking that they actually think that they're fooling these white people, but white people are sitting back laughing at you. They know that the first thing you're going to do when you get some money is you're going to run into their open arms or their closed arms even. But their arms might be closed. They might give you a little jab, but they won't stop you from living next door like they used to, during Jim Crow type of thing. So I do think it's funny that all these white guys be poking jabs at these so-called black faketivists, knowing that the first thing they're going to do when they get that money and they get on is move next door to a white man and a white woman. That's what they're going to do. And so that's why they were clowning them in the article. If riots happen this time, expect to see mass arrests. Black Lives Matters followers will find themselves in jail, denounced by the leadership. Oh, it's no question, Rodney. I agree with you 100% on that. I said that before, that Trump stood down from using some of the martial laws that are on the books for him to take control as commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. He can take control of the National Guard under certain laws that have been passed under things like the Patriot Act and other kinds of martial law leaning acts that give a president certain kinds of power when there's a national emergency declared. So for all that it said is about Trump, he actually restrained himself quite a bit. Now, the reason he did it was because he wanted to make the governors of those states look stupid, which he did make them look stupid. But he chose not to use that federal law. But you can believe that Jim Crow Joe, Kamala Harris, they're going to initiate that federal law. If Derek Chauvin gets off in a few weeks and they come to some kind of mistrial or not guilty, my prediction is that there's going to be a lot of urban cities that are going to burn, but I think that it's going to be put to those rebellions will be quelled very quickly by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They're going to act much more aggressively. And again, we're talking about those that believe in the power of the state. So when you have like policymakers that are statists is the correct term, that believe in exercising the maximum amount of power to the state and want to give more and more control to the state, oh, they're going to be very quick to use the authority of the state to quash those rebellions. So I agree with you on that. So let me see. Terrain 1017 says, pitiful. Black men represented by black lesbians. Pathetic. Yeah, man. You know, again, that thumbnail that I put up for this live stream is very telling, since there was a remake of an iconic photo of the publicly outed CIA and FBI agent Gloria Steinem. Now, the black woman that was in the picture with her back when they did that, when they were doing the Combahee River initiatives and all that, these 70 feminists, we don't even know her name, really. There's probably a way to find her name, but we all know who Gloria Steinem is. So that, again, this just goes to show how quickly and how easy it is that these white statists and these so-called white liberals, they know who to use within the black majority to push their agendas. So Gloria Steinem, from the moment that she took that picture, she got famous. She got a lot of funding, a lot of monies that, had that picture never been taken, would have gone to even a black female organization. But because she had that symbolic photo op, they said, oh, this is a white liberal woman. The blacks love her. Let's put all this money into her magazines. Let's put all this money into her movies. Let's get her in the rooms that she can marry the same bad boys that she claims that she hates so much. That's the funny thing about Gloria Steinem. Everything that she claimed to represent, she married into. She married into the exact opposite of what she claimed to represent. Oh, she hates men. Men are bad, patriarchy, all that shit. Well, she didn't end up broke like a lot of the black women that subscribed to her magazine and listened to all her misandrous speeches, now did she? She ended up getting in the rooms of Hollywood and marrying like famous white men, rich white men that can tell her to leave if they want to at any time. No, she chose to be with someone that was a white patriarch. Whereas those black women, since 1975, we see what the outcome of their families were. And even those black women that were kissing her ass, we see what happened with them. They've been lost to history. No one knows their name. Just like with the Me Too movement, the same dynamic plays itself out over and over and over again. So that's what Xanatos Clutch is speaking to. The ignorance and falling for the same scheme every 20 years. Black Americans that have this problem of falling for these schemes from the majority every 20 years. And that's why I have to agree with Xanatos on that, because that's what happened with Tarana Burke. She created the Me Too movement with other black women. It didn't take 30, 40 days before them to take her out of the equation and using the propaganda machine of Madison Avenue. You all remember how they did that back when they were talking about Cosby and Weinstein. They did that cover and they put like all these white Hollywood women on there, these white feminists. But they said, Tarana Burke, it ain't no way in hell that your face is going on this Time magazine. We don't care if you created Me Too. We don't care. We're taking it over. And she herself came out very briefly now. She got kind of angry and she came out and said that Hollywood's taking my movement and giving it to pretty little spoiled white girls. Now you notice that she quickly backtracked on those comments and she never made a comment like that again. And she let those white people take over that movement and they've been cashing in. They gave her a little bit of movement, gave her a Madden King, and she's been mostly silent ever since. But this same playbook has been used every 20 years and is being used again now with this Patrisse Kahn situation. And that's why they did a remix of that iconic photo of Gloria Steinem and the random black chick, because that's their playbook right now. They're united, not for your benefit or any benefit that they say that they're to the general intersectional alleged collaboration, but strictly to anything that benefits the white majority. I'll just put it to you like that. So some people say, well, no, they're going to keep the status quo in play, but with a different figureheads at the front of these movements. That's it. Just different figureheads. So let me see. Darth Low IQ. They don't even claim to love us no more. They still fuck us though. That's interesting that you say that. That they say, you say that they don't love us no more. they still fuck us though. I don't know. They only fucking a small group of black men. So if they was really having sex with all the black men that you claim in Darflo, probably wouldn't have no gender war. Because to be honest, a lot of brothers that are in that gender war kind of thing, that's actually what they're looking for. They're hoping that they can get a little bit of that sleeve. And that's what a lot of them are mad about, is the sleeve, not necessarily the power dynamics and the social order itself. So if what you were saying were true, probably wouldn't even be a gender war. So I'll get a couple more of you guys' comments before I get up out of here. I haven't even eaten lunch yet. Turbattle says, the king of the black mainstream is Sean King Talcum-X. I mean, seriously, bro. It's unreal. I remember back when they kind of exposed him, I think it was like the website. I don't know if it exists anymore, but there was a website, I believe it was called like Smoking Gun or something like that. And I remember when they exposed Sean King probably about 2-3 years ago. And they ran like this series of articles with his birth certificate, interviewing his mom, interviewing his brother, and all these people. And then we found out that he was actually a Caucasian male. And I remember the amount of black people, specifically black women, of course, that were fighting for him, saying that he was like an honorary black man. He may as well be black. It was just ridiculous. And that was 3 years ago, man, that they ran that series. And that's when they gave him the name Talcum-X, because I remember that. Because I didn't know what he was. I just thought he was one of these John B type of dudes. You know what I'm saying? I thought he was Latino the first time I saw him, like a white Latino. And then other people were telling me, well, he's black. His daddy was black. And then that article came out from the Smoking Gun, man, showing that he was straight up white. His birth certificate, his daddy was white. His grandma white. Yeah, Turbattle wrote Rachel Dolezal, the whole transracial thing was a thing for about 90 seconds. Yeah, get a little black haircut, find you a little swirling chick, and you're an honorary black person. So, you know, I heard something on another channel recently, and there was a commenter that he used the term, he said, the black majority has no firewall, and that's why, you know, ultimately the Trojan horses can come right through the door. And that's the truth about the black majority. You know, the COINTELPRO thing was easy, even in the 60s. You know, we don't talk about that a lot, but the COINTELPRO thing was easy, even in the 60s, to infiltrate these meaningful black organizations. It didn't take very long. We really have, dude, do you understand how easy it is to infiltrate an organization now in 2021 with the technology we have today, with the fact that Google works with the NSA and works with the CIA and all these agencies to give them access to your emails? They share data with the telecommunication phone companies, give them your information. They can tap your calls under the Patriot Act and other acts and all kinds of FISA kind of mandates that have been put out in the last 25 years. So this idea of creating some kind of organization that's going to be like a locked box, it ain't going to happen, bro. That's why I like Mr. Neely Fuller's theory on a message and individuals strengthening their own critical thinking skills and being able to operate as individuals and come together for certain kind of initiatives and being separated very quickly, because it doesn't matter who the individual is, the message is the movement. And there's some that would like you to believe that, oh, we can create like this lockbox kind of situation in 2021. Well, if it can be created in 2021, how is it they failed in the 60s to do it when they didn't have all this technology they have today? So that's why I say the message should always be more important, and just having a discussion and educating each other with the tools that we have before us. So I'm gonna finish out this article, man, and get up out of here, because I'm getting kind of hungry right now. But I do appreciate you all stopping in on short notice to join me to have this discussion, because, you know, shout out to the brother Kid Organic and the guy who emailed me about it. I'm sure that there'll be other people that will speak on this, and they should. I hope there's 100 more people talking about this, because we need to have that discussion. Call these people out that are speaking in your name. If they want to raise 90 million, I don't have any problem with it. But stop claiming that you're doing it because of dead black men and for their benefit. Stop it. Say that you're doing it for yourself. Say that you're going to raise 100 million. Stop Asian hate. Tell them that. This whole time they told you guys Black Lives Matter. And I remember how angry they all got when that term All Lives Matters was being used. Remember that? Now, here we are a year later, and Black Lives Matter really does mean all lives matter. Their whole agenda, ever since the death of George Floyd and since that 90 million came in, has been all lives matters. Matter of fact, don't be surprised if the Black Lives Matters after this whole thing, this outing of Patrisse Kahn Cullors, don't be surprised, just like they scrubbed their website of their anti-family rhetoric, don't be surprised if Black Lives Matters is folded and it becomes All Lives Matter global network this time next year. Do not be surprised. May not even make it to the end of the year. Don't be surprised within 30 or 60 days if Black Lives Matter's name is not changed to All Lives Matter. Don't be surprised. What goes on to say in the article that Cullors co-founders have left, and last summer Cullors assumed leadership of the Black Lives Matter global network, the national group that oversees the local chapters of the loosely arranged movement. Cullors' move has not been universally welcome. Politico reported in October. Local organizers told Politico they saw little or no money and were forced to crowdfund to stay afloat. Now think about that for a second, what the article just said. Local organizers told Politico they saw little or no money and were forced to crowdfund to stay afloat. Some organizers say they were barely able to afford gas and housing. So while Cullors and her wife is living in LA Hills, far away from the march and the burning, getting that 90 million in 1 year, not 90 million over years, you all. They made 90 million just in 2020 alone, and 90% of those funds came after the death of George Floyd. It was a very small window when they made that 90 million. Very small window. In a year after the death of George Floyd, on an anniversary of his death, and while the trial is going on, Patrisse Cullors and her wife and all their new white friends and white liberal friends are partying up, having barbecues, not wearing no mask out there in California. Partying up, living good off the death of George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, Walter Scott, Sandra Bland, and all the other black bodies that she's building her castle in the sky off of. So it goes on to say, Black Lives Matter's global network filters its donations through a group called 1,000 Currents, which made it even more complicated to trace the cash. So they're saying that Black Lives Matters, the corporation, layers the way it receives its money and how it dispenses this money for whatever it's using it for behind a lot of other incorporated shields. So here you have mainstream news media outlets saying that the financial situation with Black Lives Matters is so opaque that they know about the 90 million, but even their Snoop investigators aren't 100% sure if it isn't 900 million because it's not transparent, which is ironic because that's been one of the messaging coming from woke tech companies is about being transparent and telling everybody how much money they made and how it's spent. Transparency has been a big thing, allegedly, amongst the woke business owners in Silicon Valley. So it's ironic that Black Lives Matters, the incorporated version, is trying to keep all of their finances hidden from public disclosure. Interesting. So Salome Lima, executive director of 1,000 Currents, told the site, donations to Black Lives Matters are restricted donations to support the activities of Black Lives Matters, which one of those activities that they're talking about is enriching Patrisse Cullors. That's one of those activities. It's her living good. So everyone talks about the black church and this or that. Look it, man. We're talking a secular thing now. So you just taking the pimps out of the pulpits, and now they're just wearing jeans and tees now. So they took off the suit and they took off the religious frock or whatnot, and now your pulpit pimps are out in the street in tees and in designer jeans, blending in with you. But that pimping of the black dysfunction and misery it's just a different face for a different time. That's it. But the game is still the same, man. So Patrisse, you might catch her in her Levi's and her tee with her wifey or whatnot, but ultimately she's going back home to LA after, going out there and saying a couple words on her speech. She's probably preparing for a political career. So that's why she bought the 1.4 million. Now she's going to be deeply connected with white Hollywood out there in LA. 5 years from now, you'll be hearing about her running for like governor or something like that in California, man. And her rallying cry will be Trans women lives matters. I'm calling it right now. If Patrisse beats this exposure and she sticks around like many of these pulpit pimp types do, don't be surprised if she's running on the banner of trans women lives matters in 2024. So it said that last month, AP reported that Black Lives Matter brought in 90 million in donations last year, leading to Michael Brown Sr. to join other Black Lives Matter activists demanding 20 million from the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. So the father of the young black man that was killed, Michael Brown, his father, a grassroots organizer and a victim of race soldiers, he came through and he was saying that the Black Lives Matters wasn't giving him no cut of these proceeds, that he, as someone who is actually the victim of these race soldiers, could actually get together with other parents of these victims and continue their grassroots movement. No, Black Lives Matter now has corporate representation and corporate consultation. And they told those broads, yeah, you don't got no power here no more. You just the face. We're going to do with this money what we want to do with it. And we got to put this money towards this Asian thing, getting Andrew Yang elected, this illegal immigration thing, and this gay stuff. So that 90 million ain't going to no Michael Brown Sr. So you can just go ahead and tell them whatever you got to tell them, or just stop answering their calls, because this money is going where we want it to go. You get out there and you take this picture and replicate this Gloria Steinem pose and shut up, and you gonna be lost to history just like that black woman was 20 years from now. So Michael Brown Sr. says that 20 million was what he was demanding that they give to him and other victims' parents. And he asked the question, why hasn't my family foundation received any assistance from the Black Lives Matter movement? He asked in a statement, Cullors is yet to respond to Daily Mail's request for comment. The activist who married Janaea Khan, a gender non-conforming leader of Black Lives Matter in Toronto in 2016, has been in high demand since her 2018 memoir became a bestseller. In October, she publishes her follow-up, Abolition. Now that's funny that they in the article. So this chick, Patrisse Kahn Cullors, she's publishing a book that's coming out in October called Abolition. And part of that whole abolition is the abolition of the nuclear family, the abolition of private property, and the abolition of free speech. But you know what she don't want an abolition? Her bank account. I bet you she doesn't want her bank account abolished. So this is going to be interesting to see if this story really goes viral tomorrow, because you know it's a Sunday and this story is just really breaking. It's going to be interesting to see if this goes viral tomorrow. This whole story about Patrisse, because that is ironic that her book is called Abolition. I've been telling you, and everyone's been telling you, these people, they claim that they're Marxists and communists, and they're making money off of telling you that they're Marxists and communists. Her book title is Abolition. But yes, she's a 100% dyed-in-the-wool American capitalist, just like me. The only thing is, I'm a capitalist, and I want you to know I'm a capitalist. She's a wolf in sheep's clothing, making her wealth off the death of black bodies. So she also works as a professor of social and environmental arts at Arizona's Prescott College, and in October 2020, signed a sweeping deal with Warner Brothers. So a woman with no experience in directing, acting, music, dancing, any other arts, poetry, she got a deal a year ago with Warner Brothers. No directorial experience, no acting, dancing, beatboxing, no acting skills at all. But she can get a deal with Warner Brothers, and there's very talented black folk out there, real talented, Juilliard trained talented, that can't get a deal at all. Starving artists, 200,000 starving artists in New York City, all classically trained, very skilled and talented. They can't get a book deal. They can't get a movie deal with Warner Brothers. But this woman, Patrisse Kahn Cullors, got a deal off of the death of George Floyd. So it goes on to say in closing, the arrangement is described as a multi-year and wide-ranging agreement to develop and produce original programming across all platforms, including broadcast, cable, and streaming. As a longtime community organizer and social justice activist, I believe that my work behind the camera will be an extension of the work I've been doing for the last 20 years, she said in a statement obtained by Variety. I look forward to amplifying the talent and voices of other Black creatives through my work, as long as they are not Black men. So we know, hey, the community organizing racket, the social justice racket, it worked out for former President Barack Obama. So I guess that's where the money's at. So we all might be in the wrong field. We might have to get in on this social justice warrior, community activist game. Because one thing about the fake hoteps, everybody's welcome. Con artists, virtuous, they all welcome. So that's the end of that article. I'll read a few more comments before I close this out. I really do appreciate y'all riding with me to get through that article. You know, go support the other brothers that are going to be speaking on this topic, because I'm quite sure it'll catch fire. Because a lot of brothers, I know I was on a few panels last year during the riots. One particular was with Mr. Fantastic, and he was going in on the Black Lives Matters thing, and we talked about it. So I'm quite sure he'll probably be talking about it and do a panel. Because I hate to say, I told you so, but I told you so. So let's see. The brother Terrain says, white men now are trying to discourage all this education and career chasing in their women to reproduce more. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like I said, man, as quiet as it's kept, man, and how much they complain about this white majority, they love the white majority. The only thing that's different in 2021 than 1865, in my opinion, is that they asking for air conditioning and a Range Rover on the plantation, but they ain't trying to leave that damn that plantation. They just want to remake and reform the appearance of the plantation, but it's still the same dynamic, bro. These white people know that they want to live right next door to them and love them and lay up with them and all that. They're not fooling nobody. Marty Williams says, any media product she produces will be absolute poison for black men. Oh, absolutely. I don't even watch Hollywood. It's when I do like turn on my streaming to watch like a movie, it's usually something that's made before like 2010. Hollywood has just gone down the toilet the last 10 years, man. So we already know whatever movies that she's involved in will have to do with her agenda, abolishing the nuclear family, abolishing free speech. And I think she's going to shy away from abolishing private property now, because again, she's sitting up there on over $1.4 million of property while she's writing the communist script. So make that make sense. Let's see if I can, let me see. Great Britain says, a race soldier is a person that bases their fight socially to start a race war. Sir Anthony says, the fact that her writing has been a bestseller is pathetic. Yeah, you guys have all made some very, very great comments. Okay, so the brother Darius, he said that he had a super chat that he wanted me to read. So let me go back. Hey, Darius, can you just repost your comment, and your comment will be the last one I read before I get off. Sorry that I missed your super chat, man, but you know, I was reading the article. So Darius Harper, can you just repost your comment in the chat, and I'll read it before I get out of here. So Turbattle says that these black movies be trauma-based propaganda. Yeah, man. I don't even watch the kind of movies that they put out that are targeted towards the black majority. Don't even intrigue me at all. I'll be watching like a lot of science fiction type movies, historical business movies, documentaries. That's kind of what my vibe is when it comes to movies. So the typical kind of movie that Hollywood puts out that's aimed towards the black majority doesn't appeal to me at all. So Darius Harper, if this was your super chat, he says, can we get a video about those TikTok videos you discussed on Game Changers live stream? Oh, you're talking about the Swirl Mountain Rebellion videos where the white dudes are calling out black women and Asian dudes are calling out black women to their face. I mean, I'll look into doing something like that, but really with my Bottom Shelf Brad videos, it's more focused on like things that go through the criminal system. But I'll look into like, you know, maybe doing something like that in the future. But there's other content creators that have done something on the TikTok rejection that a lot of black women are experiencing live. So you might want to look for that. But with me, I'm more focused more on the criminal stuff and like the murder, the rapes and things like that. That's kind of more my focus, Darius, when I had those conversations. Because for the most part, that dynamic don't really interest me that much. But I just like to show that for all that said about black men being this violent, this, or being that bad, that, ultimately, bad behavior is a human trait amongst certain human beings. And it has nothing to do with race, gender, any of that stuff. Bad people do bad things, good people do good things. And sometimes good people do bad things, and sometimes bad people do good things. So you have to analyze every scenario as it comes. That's just my whole take on that dynamic, Darius. So I don't really care too much. I just use it as an example to show, hey, you say that black men are doing these things, but you're not calling out this behavior in other groups. So you really don't have a problem with the behavior itself or the outcomes. You just have a problem of the person doing this melanin content is higher than the other. That's it. So that's more my focus. So this will be the last comment from Terrain. The show them, one black father, black wife, two black daughters. His only son was killed in the beginning. Hey, Trent, I'll have to look into it, that them. I never heard of it. But with that, I do appreciate you all coming out. Hopefully, you'll go and look into the story yourself and see what I was saying about Patrisse Kahn Cullors and the fact that while claiming to be a communist and a Marxist, she's a pure capitalist living high off the hog in the hills of LA. And with that, I'm out. Everyone have a good Sunday.